Alright boys, here we go. It's been a minute since I've done one of these, so I've got to get back into the flow of things. But this is NEPG round 1 in Sumter, South Carolina. This race was killer. The conditions couldn't have been any better. You can see from just this opening section that the soil was just glorious. It was a true hero dirt kind of situation, except for a couple spots where it was just, this is all low country kind of sand, and it got a little loose every once in a while, but for the most part it was just traction the whole time. There was a threat of rain the entire race, but it didn't really rain until about the 5th and 6th test, and even that was just enough to piss off your goggles, and you get a little bit under your tear-offs, and you just screw you up a little bit. So I've only done a couple Enduros. I did Cherokee last year, I did Sumter last year, and I did Little Brown Jug. This year I'm doing only Enduros. I'm probably going to do a couple of hare scrambles and mostly just going to do these races. This is my favorite type of racing. The layout of the course is way different. You don't run the same course. They're the same sections over and over and over again. You just get in your row and you race against your class, really racing against yourself unless there's somebody else in your class that's on your row, and you just are out there hammering the whole time. The thing I got to get back into is I got to understand that I need to push the whole time. I can't just get by yourself and then relax. And I talked about it all last year that that's what I was going to do. That's what I did, and it was just a habit I had to break. And then taking a little bit of time off, not racing, and then just jumping straight back into it, I rock back into those old bad habits, and then would back off a little bit. These kind of races, from what I can tell and what I've done so far, that back off of pushing the pace really can hurt you. And it's one of those things where you lose either by 2 seconds, or you lose by 30 seconds, which happened to me in a couple cases, or in like this, where this is my first B race. I ended up in 21st out of 39, which in a national level is not terrible, and I kind of expected to be about mid-pack, but while I'm not disappointed, I expected to do better. This track was incredible because it would go from wide open, pretty regular trail to super tight single track into sections like this, where this is like row pine, but it's just hotline heaven. You can go wherever you want. As long as you can see a marker, just aim for it and go. And you can see up ahead of me, there's people everywhere. And like I said, I've only done 3 Enduros, but the 3 Enduros I've done, the thing I've learned is that hotlining is the key to winning an Enduro. And some people might say, oh, you're cheating if you're hotlining. No, you're just maximizing your efficiency on the trails, the way I'm looking at it. And if you got to use it to pass somebody, or you get behind you can make a move on somebody you've been battling with by making a better line choice. Everybody's taking advantage of it, and that just seems to be the way that this Enduro monster works. Up ahead in this section, you can just see how there's lines everywhere, and we were row 14. The big struggle I'm having is figuring out what row I need to end up on. So in this race, I think I could have been like row 40 and been happy with it, because that's past the pros, which means that you get the benefit of seeing pro lines. But in the earlier rows, what you get is a little cleaner trail. So if it had rained the whole time, or like in Florida, like at the next race where it's all kind of sugar sand, being in a later row just ends up meaning you're in whoops forever. Big, deep sand whoops, and that's just no fun. I don't know if you guys have ever ridden that kind of stuff, but whoops for miles is not fun. It's just brutal the whole time. So it's a weird strategic game to play. You can either go row early and get clean trail, or you go a row behind and you get to see the maximally efficient trail to run through. And it depends on your riding style. I would probably benefit better from having the being able to see all the options, but I prefer to run an earlier row. Get it, hit it, and be done. That taped off section was a jump. We came out to cut trail for the Enduro beforehand, and that was an option that the guy from Citra was going to put in. It was supposed to be a jump, but they took it out. I can't really blame them. There were 750 people here, and they, however many are going to jump it, but in the heat of the moment, the people that try, somebody gets hurt, and it's just a bad, like a black eye kind of situation. makes it hard to judge whether you should leave that kind of stuff in the race or not. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to handle doing these races. I want to make a video for each one, and then at the end of the year I'd like to make a recap for the videos. But there's 6 tests. I have footage from 5 of them, and nobody wants to sit down and watch 5 hours of footage of me just riding in a trail, you know, like I'm talking to myself and just doing my thing. And there might be a couple, like 4 people that want to see that, but I'm not going to go through putting up 5 hours of trail riding. So this is kind of my guinea pig video for how I'm going to handle doing these from here forward. I want to make it digestible in one sitting without feeling, you know, tedious. And we'll see what this kind of, you know, time, 18 minutes or whatever time frame, see if that's something everybody tends to like. Or you can see how it's all the same, you know, region, so the terrain's going to be similar. And there's a lot of pine, there's a lot of low brush, like regrowth after clear cut. There's some really, really killer row pine sections. There's real fast quad trail sections like this. These 2 guys have been running. They would catch me. They were like row 15 or 16. They would catch me every time. And then after they got into this section, I was like, I just wanted to see how long, you know, I could keep up with them. And this is where they're, you know, superior. They're probably A riders, but their ability to ride faster and then make line choices faster really shines. And like I said, this is one you can see where I'm not really just pushing the pace the whole time. I'm in this section and I've kind of backed off. I'm trying to work, but I'm not pushing to my limit. You know, I need to be exhausted. I need to be totally wiped out by the end of one of these things. And, you know, leave it all on the trail, not leave enough in the tank to be able to keep riding for another hour after finishing a 60-mile enduro. Another thing I like is that in a hare scramble, you get people that tend to, I don't know if they overestimate their ability or they just don't, it's like a pride thing where they don't want to get out of your way. But there's people that will, you know, they're slower than you, but they refuse to move. They refuse to get over. They refuse to, you know, let you by even if you're a faster rider, which pushes you into making a weird, risky decision to pass. The thing I realize about enduros is that when people feel like you're faster than them, they just move over. And it's because, you know, at a hare scramble, you're racing your line. So somebody who's, you know, buzzing you can be somebody on your line, or they can be, if you know who they are, they could be, you know, using the Indian yell to try and get by you and make you make a mistake or something. In this, it's more about racing yourself and seeing where you place in your class. And so, you know, you expect faster riders to come up on you the whole ride, so people just tend to get out of the way, which makes it really nice to be able to, you get behind somebody, you give them a couple yells, and they just move over. No argument, not really any kind of no real fighting about it. It just happens. And then on your line also, there's like a pecking order that gets established. So there's, on my line, there were 3 50A guys, a 250B or an open B guy, and then me in 30B and Josh in 30C. And the pecking order just established itself. There was the open B guy, 2 of the 50A guys, me, and then Josh and the other 50A rider. And that's just how it panned out for the entirety of the race. It makes it so you know where you're going to end up and where you need to take off in your class, and it maximizes your ability to ride the race. So these sections look super tight in the video, and these were tight, but like I said, this race had such varied degrees of tightness and like different styles of trail that this was a highway compared to some of the stuff that you ended up riding, where it was miles of just bar banging, or like a hedge maze almost for one section in section 6, where it was, you just were in what looked like a bush hog and driven through a hedge, and that's what you rode through. It was incredible. I'd tell everybody, if you haven't ridden an enduro, this is definitely something that you need to look into. It may not be your riding style, but doing a couple of these really opened your eyes to what's out there, and these are so much fun, at least for me, to go out and do all the time. And that's why I'm chasing this whole series this year. I'm doing all 10 rounds of the NEPG series, following them all the way up, and I plan to do every one of them. So this section was really cool too. This was a lower, old growth kind of pine section. It looked like it had previously been clear cut and then grown up, but it was wide and fast, and it was just who could hotline better was how you made it through this. And there were some major hotlines. And the trees were weird because they don't, like, normally you hit a branch or something and it breaks, or it's not springy. These were almost like rubber. You'd hit them and they would you'd hit these branches and they would sling back like they were rubber bands, and you could really clobber somebody with them, or take yourself out because they push back so hard. So you had to be cautious while being willing to take the risk, to shoot off into the brush to make the efficient line and risk that little bit of, you're going to hit some branches, you're going to hit some brush, and hope that you don't run over any kind of trash in the trail that's really going to hinder your ability to make it through the section you're trying to make it through. I gotta say, one thing I'm really not good at, or I don't know what it is about it, but it really just messes with my head, but the clear cut sections like this, I just don't ride them well. I can't get comfortable. I don't feel like I'm riding to my ability. It's almost like riding a turn track, but somebody's really burned it in, and it's all rut, and you don't ride the same rut they do, and trying to stay inside their line. It's just very difficult for me. And I don't know if it's bike setup, or if I don't know if it's just personal confidence, but for whatever reason I just can't really do them well. And there weren't many of them in this race, but there were enough of them that I felt like it impacted my ability to ride, and that's nobody's problem but my own. So this is at test 4. This is where the C riders, after this test, the C riders race were over. B riders had to do test 1 through 5, and then everybody else had to do tests 1 through 6. I did all 6 tests. I didn't finish test 6 because I ran out of gas. That's why there's a gas stop, so put gas in your bike. I just forgot. I was too worried about getting something to eat, getting something to drink, and then being late to my line actually for test 5, that I forgot to put gas in my bike. And I thought I might be able to make it. I got pretty close. I ended up 1.5 miles away from the finish, and just bogged down, ran out of gas. Luckily there was somebody in EPG who was there, actually let me steal some gas out of his bike that he was using to get from location to location and get me out of the trail. The cool thing about that was that I got to sit in the woods while Stuart Baylor and Russell Bobbitt and Mackenzie Tricker all came by. And it just really puts into perspective the ability of some people riding a dirt bike. Mackenzie's insanely fast. Stuart Baylor just makes these decisions that just look like, it's someone that you look at and you're like, why in the world? Why would you do that? But it pays off for him, and he's an animal, man. So this section was old trail is what it seemed like, where they had run a previous race in this, and I think I remember this section from Sumter last year that we ran to the other direction, which isn't a problem, but you can tell a trail that's been beat in really significantly versus virgin trail, which most of the first 4, but this is still test 4. Absolutely, the first 3 tests were new trail. Test 4 was used some old trail, but wasn't all old trail. Test 5 and 6 were, I think, entirely old trail, and they weren't beat up by any means, but you could tell a difference. And I like that about these courses, because if you're a North Carolina guy and you go race Denver, Denver's always Denver, no matter how many times you go race it. At least in these races, in these enduros, they vary the track enough to make it so you can get some fresh trail. You're not always showing up to Sumter and racing the same trails at Sumter. Some of them might be familiar, but it's not always the same stuff. And that's one of the more appealing things about this style of racing, is that it's not always the same thing. You get to see different parts of the country and experience what different terrain's like, and how your bike treats different soil types, and how you attack trail that's, you know, located in different places. Just a lot of variation that you don't get for racing the same series, where they run 5 of the same tracks essentially across the street from each other. You know, it's just the same stuff over and over and over again. This was the most hare scramble style trail, reminiscent of like a North Carolina hare scramble series trail, and it was tight, but it wasn't unmanageably tight, and it had really, you know, pretty decent flow. And if you know how to ride tight trail, there's nothing surprising. It was just one of those tracks where it was I had a lot of gratitude towards my ability to ride tight single track. So the problem with sand in later tracks or sand and using old tracks, is that the old whoops are still there. They don't, if nobody rides it, nobody wears it out, and they don't go out and grade any of that stuff. So you start seeing some of the sections where there's these big, long stretches of real deep whoops. Not a problem for short stints, but like I said earlier, it's just not something I'm really interested in doing forever. Which is, everybody's telling me, you know, oh, wait till Florida, and it's just whoop heaven forever. I'm gonna do them all, so I'm in for the long run. So might as well get used to it, right? These guys in front of me were a group from row 15, and they would come around me every time, and I'd spend, you know, the rest of the race, the rest of my test trying to keep up with them. And I could keep them in sight, but you know, it shows you where you need to be. And like I said, my finish was 21st out of 39. I wasn't unhappy. It was what I kind of expected, mid-pack, especially for my first B race in a national kind of arena. I'm not disappointed, but it shows me that I've got work to do, and I'm excited about having the work to do. I need to get out there and just push harder all the time to make myself faster. Really excited about doing the National Enduro Series for the whole year, and excited to see, you know, the rest of the country, or, you know, the eastern seaboard for the most part, but, you know, a little bit further into the country, and experiencing what racing's like in other places. I hope to see some of you guys out there. There's going to be a video for each one. It's been a lot of fun. We'll see you at the next race in Alligator Enduro in Florida. Peace.